Captain Masau Swinyaga's hands trembled on his control stick as he stared at the silver ghosts materializing through the morning haze. April 7, 1945. A date that would shatter everything Japanese pilots believed about the laws of physics and aerial warfare. "Control, this is Falcon Leader," Swinyaga's voice cracked through his radio headset. "Confirm your last transmission. Did you say southeast?" The radio crackled back with barely controlled panic. "Confirmed, Falcon Leader. Unknown fighters approaching from southeast. Estimate 600 miles from nearest American base." Swinyaga felt his blood turn to ice. 600 miles? That was aerodynamically impossible. No single-engine fighter in existence could fly that distance and still have fuel to fight. It violated every principle of aircraft design he'd learned in 3 years of combat. Yet there they were. Sergeant Yamamoto, his grizzled crew chief, was pounding frantically on his cockpit rim. "Captain! Emergency scramble! They're over Tokyo itself." As Swinyaga's Nakajima engine roared to life, one terrifying question echoed in his mind. If American fighters could reach the heart of Japan with fuel to spare, what else had become possible while they weren't looking? What he was about to witness would rewrite the rules of warfare forever. For 3 years, Japanese pilots had built their entire strategy on one unshakable truth. American fighters always ran out of fuel. The chunky P-47 Thunderbolts? Gone after 300 miles. The twin-engine P-38 Lightnings? They needed bases close to their targets. Even their own legendary Zero had achieved its famous range by becoming a flying coffin. One lucky bullet and you were dead. It was the cruel equation of aerial warfare. More range meant less everything else. More fuel meant fewer weapons. Longer missions meant sitting ducks limping home on fumes. Until today. Lieutenant Akira Watanabe was climbing through 12,000 feet when he spotted them first. His radio transmission would later become legendary among surviving Japanese pilots. "Control. These aren't bombers. They're fighters. Single-engine fighters. And they're hunting." The word "hunting" sent shockwaves through every Japanese radio frequency monitoring the engagement. Hunters implied confidence. Hunters implied abundance. Hunters implied something that should have been impossible. American fighters operating over Tokyo as if it were their home field. Captain Tomajiro Ogawa, 25 victories to his credit, closed to 1,000 yards on a formation of the mysterious silver aircraft and nearly lost control of his fighter from sheer disbelief. The enemy planes were beautiful in their deadliness, all clean lines and purposeful aggression. But what made his hands shake wasn't their appearance. It was what they were carrying. "Impossible," he whispered into his oxygen mask. "Those drop tanks should be bone dry by now." The silver fighters still carried large external fuel tanks under their wings, yet they maneuvered like aircraft at the beginning of a mission, not fuel-starved survivors of an impossible journey. It defied everything Ogawa knew about fighter aviation. What he was seeing was the marriage of American industrial genius with British Rolls-Royce engineering. The P-51D Mustang powered by the Merlin engine, a combination that had just made the impossible routine. These weren't just fighters. They were flying revolutions. Flight Sergeant Kenji Nakamura, diving his Ki-84 toward the American formation, felt his worldview beginning to crack like thin ice. If they can reach Tokyo, he thought, nowhere in Japan is safe. We can't even run. The Americans weren't just present over the Japanese capital. They were predators, circling with the lazy confidence of apex hunters who knew their prey had nowhere to hide. Major Robert W. Moore, leading the 15th Fighter Group's death-dealing dance over Tokyo, had spotted Ogawa's Ki-84 climbing toward the bomber stream. What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations. Instead of the fuel-conserving defensive engagement Japanese pilots expected from long-range intruders, Moore banked his Mustang into an aggressive attack dive. His P-51D, still carrying 200 gallons of fuel despite the 700-mile journey from Iwo Jima, accelerated in a power dive that would be suicide for any normal long-range fighter. "Blue flight, drop tanks now," Moore's voice cut through the radio static. "We've got company." Swinyaga watched in stunned horror as the American fighters jettisoned their external fuel tanks, not because they were empty, but because they were preparing for extended combat with fuel to spare. "That's impossible," Swinyaga breathed. "Those tanks should have been bone dry 50 miles ago." But Moore's P-51D was banking sharply toward him, climbing with the aggressive confidence of a pilot operating from his home base. As the two fighters closed at a combined speed exceeding 700 miles per hour, Swinyaga realized he was fighting a ghost, an aircraft that shouldn't exist, flown by a pilot who should be desperately conserving fuel for an impossible journey home. Instead, the Mustang was hunting. The engagement lasted exactly 16 minutes. When it was over, 7 Japanese fighters lay scattered across Tokyo's landscape like broken toys. 2 P-51DS had taken damage but would complete their round trip of over 1,350 miles, a distance that redefined what was possible in the sky. Lieutenant Watanabe's final radio transmission, picked up by ground stations across Tokyo, captured the moment when Japanese air superiority died. "They're not leaving. They're not running out of fuel. How did they get here?" The answer would change warfare forever. Captain Swinyaga never made it home. His Ki-84 was found weeks later in a rice field outside Tokyo, fuel tanks empty, pilot dead from a single .50 caliber bullet through the heart. He had become a symbol of Japan's new reality. The impossible had become routine. The psychological shockwave rippled through the Imperial Japanese Air Force like a seismic tremor. Flight Sergeant Nakamura, one of the few survivors, captured the moment in his diary. "We spent 3 years learning to fight Americans who must turn back at our coastline. Now they come and go as they please, hunting us like rabbits in our own sky." Within days, Japanese defensive strategy underwent a fundamental transformation. The mathematical certainty that had protected Japan's heartland, that no single-engine fighter could cross such vast distances, had been obliterated by American engineering genius. The numbers tell the story of Japan's nightmare. Between April 7 and August 15, 1945, P-51 Mustangs flew 51 very long-range missions against Japan, averaging round trips of 1,350 miles. American fighters claimed 341 Japanese aircraft destroyed for the loss of only 62 P-51s. But the true devastation wasn't measured in aircraft shot down. It was measured in the collapse of Japanese pilot morale. Master Sergeant Isamu Sasaki, a veteran with 38 victories, later recalled, "After April 1945, we stopped believing we could win. If the Americans could send fighters from Iwo Jima to Tokyo with fuel to spare, what else could they do? Where could we hide?" The P-51 Mustang had achieved something beyond military victory. It had created a revolution in strategic thinking. Captain Ogawa's final words, recorded by ground control before his Ki-84 crashed into Tokyo Bay, became prophetic. "If they can come this far, we have already lost the war." He was right. By summer 1945, experienced pilots like Warrant Officer Kenji Fujimoto were attempting kamikaze attacks on B-29 superfortresses. Not from samurai honor, but from the practical reality that traditional tactics had become useless against enemies who could appear anywhere with unlimited endurance. Today, military analysts still study those impossible flights from Iwo Jima to Tokyo as textbook examples of how technological breakthroughs can fundamentally alter warfare's course. The silver Mustangs that shocked Japanese pilots over Tokyo didn't just win air battles. They redefined what was possible in the sky. They proved that with the right combination of engineering brilliance and tactical innovation, the impossible becomes inevitable. The next time you see a P-51 Mustang in a museum, remember Captain Swinyaga's final question: how did they get here? The answer changed the world. What impossible missions do you think could reshape warfare today? The ghosts of Tokyo remind us that in war, as in innovation, yesterday's impossibility becomes tomorrow's game-changer. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories from the moments when the impossible became inevitable.